It's our pleasure most Fridays, depending on his hectic schedule, to welcome in Adam Amin from ESPN to go around the world of sports. And, of course, obviously, we're going to start with college football. And Adam is joining us from Raleigh, North Carolina this morning, I assume. Adam, since you've got the Florida State, NC State call tomorrow.
ABC at 3:30 tomorrow, my friend. It'll be one of the more intriguing games, I think, of the weekend. Maybe not the sexiest matchup, maybe not the most impactful matchup, but we've kind of been on this tour of coaches on proverbial hot seats the last few weeks. We were in Auburn a few weeks back when Gus Malzahn had lost 2 in a row, stemmed the tide a little bit with a win against Ole Miss. Last week we were in Los Angeles to see Clay Helton getting a lot of noise around the program. Suddenly they lose their first home game in 3 years at USC last week against Arizona State. And now we have a team in Florida State that has a lot of noise surrounding it again with a first-year head coach, one of many in college football this year that hasn't had the most lucrative first season at a new spot at Willie Taggart. So, I don't know, maybe we're just kryptonite, myself, Rod, and Quint. Maybe we're bad luck. I don't know what type of run we're on, but that's what we're tracking when we get in for the game tomorrow at Carter Finley Stadium.
Yeah, but you used the appropriate word, intriguing. I mean, you're right. It's not a marquee matchup, but with what has happened this season with Taggart at Florida State, man, you could not start a tenure any worse. And Dave Doran, too. I mean, he's teased those fans in Raleigh. He's recruited well. They've been close, but I'm hearing some rumblings. He's a recruiter, not a great coach. They've had some opportunities to get over the hump. They haven't been able to do it. And quite frankly, this season, more the same. When they played Clemson, they looked outclassed. What are you hearing from Wolfpack fans in regards to Doran? Is he in pretty good shape there, or are people starting to doubt him?
The situation was similar a couple of years ago. They were 5-6 going into their rivalry game against North Carolina. They beat Mitch Trubisky and the Tar Heels that day in Chapel Hill, and that kind of quelled a little bit of the noise for a little while. And the athletic administration gave Dave Doran their vote of confidence, sometimes a dreaded one, I'm sure, with how it's reacted to in college football these days. But he's heard this noise before, I'm sure. I know a 5-0 start this year looks a little more disappointing when you're sitting at 5-2. But remember, this is a program that's won 10 games one time in its program's history. I think Chuck Amato was the head coach in 2002 when that happened. So this is a program that hasn't been used to a whole lot of success and having higher expectations. So a 9-win season last year developed some more expectations. I think this is a team that can still win 9, maybe 10 games. Maybe they can be a 10-win team this year. They've got a winnable stretch of games at the end of the season. This is probably their toughest remaining stretch, where they have Florida State coming in a little bit hot after what happened a week ago at Clemson, and then they have a short week with Wake Forest coming on Thursday. So if they can get through these next 2 games with a couple of wins, I don't see why they can't be a 10, maybe 11-win team getting hot down the stretch of the season. Why not? Why can't this team do it? They're certainly talented enough. They've got the offensive firepower to do it. One of the best quarterbacks in the country in Ryan Finley.
That's Adam's game tomorrow on ABC at 2:30 Central, North Carolina State and Florida State from Raleigh. All right, let's get to the SEC because it's championship weekend almost.
This is the marquee weekend, right? This is the weekend in SEC play that everybody's been kind of circling on their calendars the last few.
Absolutely. In the East, the representative in Atlanta will be decided. It could be in the West if Alabama wins. And if LSU wins, they'll control their own destiny. Let's start in Baton Rouge because we've talked about it every week. I mean, this Alabama team has not only been incredibly efficient, they've been dynamic. They're scoring at a record clip. Every game has been decided by halftime. This LSU team's had a terrific season. I know a lot of people are dismissing the Miami win, but I can't do that. Just like Alabama and Florida State last year. When they played Miami, that was a big game. Miami was a top 10 team. A lot was on the line. LSU beat them. Who knows? If Miami wins that game, maybe their season goes differently. So LSU's had an incredible year, minus the setback at Florida, but they absolutely mauled Georgia. I've heard a lot of people say the best win in college football is Notre Dame's win over Michigan. I would argue it's LSU's win over Georgia. But this game is set up in Baton Rouge at night. LSU folks feel good that they can challenge Alabama, unlike anybody on the schedule has to this point. Alabama's still a 15-point favorite, so that shows you that Vegas says, heck, man, we got to jack this thing up just to get enough play on LSU to make it worthwhile. So clearly Alabama is the favorite in this game, but can LSU, in your opinion, take them down to the wire the way they have every time Nick Saban's taken an Alabama team in there? He's 4-1 in Baton Rouge, but all 5 games have gone down to the wire, 2 of them in overtime.
Yeah, I think this can be a close game for at least 2.5, 3 quarters, and that has a lot to do with the LSU defense, particularly the secondary. This is an Alabama bunch that we've all looked at them this season. Offensively, they're different. They're just different. This is probably the best offense that Nick Saban has had at Alabama. You could argue that their defenses have been better. I think they've had better defenses in the past, but offensively, they're as tough as any team in the country to bring down. So I think that LSU secondary is going to be tested. They cannot give up big plays early. I think the defense might be good enough to keep it close for a half, maybe 2.5 quarters. But I just feel like moving the ball against this Alabama defense is, like I said, I know there's been better Nick Saban defenses at Alabama in the past. I just feel like it's going to be really hard for LSU to move the ball. I know in flashes we've seen it. Joe Burrow has been consistent, doesn't turn the ball over. Their running game has been good at times. You pointed out the Miami game. Obviously, they had a little bit of life with Nick Brosette back there. But I just don't know if LSU can consistently move the ball against Alabama. Nobody else has been able to really do it on a consistent basis this year, and I don't see how an inconsistent offense and an above-average at best offense, I think, can move the ball against this Alabama team.
You mentioned Joe Burrow, and certainly he has been a godsend for that team. I would argue that he is the reason they're 7-1. He got a lot of moxie. He's tough. He's made big throws when he's had to make them. He's managed the game well, which is what a quarterback has to do. But he has not been asked really to go out and win a game. He did bring them back and make a couple big throws against Auburn down the stretch. But in this game, he's going to have to make plays, and you know what I'm talking about, Adam. I'm not talking about just 15-yard slants and outs, but he's going to have to throw the football down the field. They're going to have to get some chunks of yardage. He may be asked to do some things that he has not been asked to do this season. If that happens, do you think he's capable?
That's going to be the million-dollar question, right?
We were talking about Joe Burrow, and maybe if he's asked to go outside his comfort zone, can he make the kind of plays that a quarterback probably is going to have to make if that team is going to beat Alabama?
Have we really seen anybody else do it? That's the other question. I haven't seen anybody consistently move the ball in chunk fashion so far this year. So I don't see it personally happening. I still think this Alabama defense is too stout up front. There's going to be pressure on Burrow. I want to believe that this game is going to be closer than what a lot of people expect it to be. I think it could be close for some time, and I do think there could be moments where you can take advantage. Alabama decides to send 7, you get one-on-one coverage. Your receivers are good enough to win a couple of one-on-one matchups. I just don't know if he's going to have the time to do it, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see LSU guess right enough. You have to beat Nick Saban and his coordinators in the guessing game. You have to gamble at the exact right times, and then you have to execute. And I think LSU is capable of executing. I just don't know how capable they are of doing it multiple times. You need 4 to 5 big plays, I think, minimum. And I'm talking 25, 30-plus yard chunk plays in the passing game to beat Alabama. I just don't see that happening. I haven't seen anybody else be able to do that consistently. I don't see an LSU team that has been, like I said, maybe above average at its best for the majority of the season be able to do that.
So much has been made of the season. Tua Tagovailoa as having 25 touchdowns, no interceptions, playing basically 2.5 quarters per game. He's going to be asked to go deeper into the game tomorrow night. For one thing, we don't even know the status of Jalen Hurts, what his availability may be for the game. If he has a big game tomorrow night, because a lot of people are saying, well, let's see him against LSU. If he lights it up tomorrow night, could he just go ahead and lock up the Heisman?
I think this is the Heisman game, essentially. And obviously there's going to be a lot more football to be played, and we'll have conference championship weekend and everything like that as well. But, I think we've seen enough of Tua, and as good as a couple of other players have been in college football this season, a couple of running backs in particular. This guy's the star of stars right now. And to put up the production he's done in a smaller amount of time, like you said, he hasn't played the fourth quarter. So for him to have these smaller portions of time to be as efficient as he has been, as productive as he has been, I think if he has a great game against Baton Rouge, that's essentially a stealer for me. I'm sure for a lot of people, because they haven't been tested maybe by a highly ranked team just yet. This will be their biggest opportunity on the road. He has a good game in Baton Rouge at night. You can secure your legacy. You can secure your place in Alabama lore as a quarterback. And I'm sure for a lot of people, if he has a great performance, they might just lock up the Heisman for him right then and there. As
I mentioned, Bama wins. The Tide punches his ticket to Atlanta. If LSU wins, they control their own destiny. In the East, they're playing for a spot in the SEC championship game. Georgia, we expected this from the Bulldogs, not so much from Kentucky. And what a marvelous season. And we talked about this, you and I have, that Mike Stoops was given time to build this program, to get it where he's at right now. They've got a lot of seniors. They got a lot of fifth-year guys, and they're tough as nails. I'm still trying to figure out how they're 7-1. I'm still trying to figure out how they beat Missouri last week. They held off Vanderbilt at home. They had really good wins over Florida and Mississippi State. They pulled one out against South Carolina. But last week, a team that had been one-dimensional really couldn't run the ball. The passing game came through, and they pulled one out. I was watching the end of the game there, and if you're Missouri, you're just sick. But this is the kind of season Kentucky has had. They've made the plays, and now they're in a position to finish this thing off and punch their ticket for Atlanta. Would be one of the great seasons in Kentucky history. It's going to be an event tomorrow afternoon in Lexington. How do you see this one?
Biggest game in Lexington in forever, right? I mean, this is. I don't know how you could have a bigger game, to have a chance to play this, to have a chance to knock off the best team in that division. But what concerns me is what we talked about. I mean, this is an anemic-looking offense, and I love Benny Snell, and I think Benny Snell might arguably be the best running back in all of college football. I'm sure there's a lot of people who can make that argument. But can you pound the ball against Georgia, again, like we talked about with LSU and Alabama? Can you do it 40 times in a game? Can you control the clock? Can you control possession? Can you keep the ball away from Jake Fromm, who silenced a lot of people last week with a bounce-back game? And I know he had his struggles against LSU. He bounced back very nicely last week in a big game against a good Florida defense, especially late in that game. So can you keep the ball away from him by possessing it? And I fear that Kentucky is going to have trouble moving the football. And even in their big wins this season, they haven't blown anybody away offensively, I don't think. Mississippi State, kind of a marquee game, 24 points. Game against Florida early in the season, a couple of fluke plays gave them some more points in that. Issues offensively for Kentucky. And I like their quarterback. I like how athletic he is, the threat that he brings with his legs. I love Benny Snell, as we've talked about. But there are concerns about Kentucky moving the ball. Their defense is legit. I think they've proven themselves through a good sample size against good offensive teams this year. And I think you can possess the ball against Georgia, and I think you can stop Georgia a little bit as well. I'm not saying Georgia's going to automatically score 40 on this team. I think this is going to be a slug it out, grind it out type of game. I just worry that Kentucky's not going to have the firepower offensively to keep up with what Georgia can do. You got to score at least 24 points, I think, against Georgia no matter what. So I just don't know if Kentucky can do that.
College football playoff rankings came out. Top four about what we expected, with Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and Notre Dame. Michigan and Georgia, the first two out. Central Florida lurking. They held off Temple last night despite getting lit up by the Temple offense. That's 21 in a row. I have tried to cut them some slack, Adam, and I think you probably have too, because what they're doing is impressive. There's no doubt about it. And but last night, I guess maybe it's the fact I cover Alabama. When the game came on and they flashed the ribbon there inside the stadium and it said 2017 College Football National Champions, I thought to myself, this is why they're getting pushback. It's just disrespectful. These are no longer mythical national championships. We have a system in place that crowns a national champion. And I understand, Danny White's trying to put pressure on the College Football Playoff Committee and the NCAA and the Power Fives and all that. But at some point, it just becomes a little bit ridiculous. And I think they're hurting their own cause by continuing to push this narrative. Keep winning, get to a New Year's Six Bowl, beat another marquee team. Who knows what will happen in the future? But you're not the national champion from 2017. And I think at this point now, the playoff committee, the folks that matter in college football are just kind of fed up with this.
I can understand that perspective. My partner, Ron Gilmore, watched a lot of those Boise State games, those Boise State teams where they were as consistent as anybody in the country, 10-win season, the mid to late 2000s. And only then, after an extended period of time, did a team like that get any consideration in a BCS system to be a national championship contender. It would take something like that. I'm saying a 3 to 5 year period of success for people to look at UCF in that regard. But at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult. Look, their defense has not been that good the last couple of years. Don't get me wrong, a great American conference for offense. Houston, Memphis, South Florida, these are all phenomenal offensive teams, typically in the top 20 to 25 each year. So I get that they're going to face some very difficult offenses, but Their schedule strength over the last 2 seasons is in the 120s. And the point of the college football playoff is to also look at each season in a vacuum and not go back to last year and slot up and slot down like we had with the AP poll. That's why people complain, well, this team beat this team, but we're better and yet we're behind in the AP poll. Why is that the case? Well, look at the playoff. Look at the top 4. They put LSU at number 3 despite a loss because it's harder to go 7-1 against LSU's schedule than it is to go 8-0 against Notre Dame's schedule. And frankly, LSU has had more impressive, more high-quality wins. That doesn't mean that Notre Dame's not in the thick of things for it, but you still have to play your schedule. And the schedule in front of you, if it's not stacking up to the other teams around you that are in the mix for the top 4 and the top 6 and all those other highly touted spots, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to compare and contrast when you have to go into a Big Ten stadium every week or an SEC stadium every week or even an ACC or Pac-12 stadium every week and play in those environments on a consistent basis. It's not like going in front of 18,000 people at the Link in Philly to play Temple on a Friday night where students aren't really going to show up to go to the game. So I think you have to take those things into consideration. And I'm a champion for these guys. If you ask me if I wanted 8 teams, I would say yeah. But is it going to happen? I don't think so. Not with what Bill Hancock has talked about, not with what the intention of the playoff committee has been, just to get it to 4 teams. I think they're kind of in the mindset of, hey, just be happy that it's 4, just be happy we have a playoff. And until the system itself changes, I can't give the same credence to UCF that I do to a team like a 1-loss Michigan or a team like an Oklahoma that has maybe a bad loss looking at it now. I cannot stack those up and say it's apples to apples. These are apples to oranges comparisons.
What do you make of the mess at Maryland? I mean, they have a 2-month investigation. Board of Regents recommends that Durkin be reinstated. He's reinstated. He goes and watches practice. The very next day, the outgoing president, Wallace D. Lowe, fires him. Players are fighting each other over this situation. The family of Jordan McNair wants the Board of Regents president to resign or be taken off that board. I mean, it's just, what the heck, man? I mean, what are they going to do just to settle this thing down and move forward?
The level of tone deafness from a Board of Regents to the needs and desires of, I'd say, the level of tone deafness is head scratching, to say the least. I don't know how you recover from this in terms of what the perception of your program is. You know, if I'm a parent of a young man who wants to go play at Maryland, am I comfortable sending that young person to DJ Durkin right now and that staff? Would I have been comfortable doing that? No, and I know the firing has taken place. I know that that's the case. I like the fact that Matt Canada sent out the letter to the families. I like that was able to be seen by people around college football and see what the message is. And I think he's done a really good job keeping a lot of guys together. But to have that level of tone deafness and not appreciate what the needs and desires are of a large student body, to not be aware of how the initial news was going to sit with a lot of people around that program, I'm just very surprised. And I don't know how Maryland recovers in terms of a perception issue right now, because this is as bad as I've seen a decision be made at this high of a level in college athletics.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, we're getting short on time, but I want to get your take on what we saw last night in Santa Clara. Jimmy Garoppolo out, C.J. Beathard out. So in comes Nick Mullens from Spain Park High School in Hoover, University of Southern Mississippi, a complete afterthought, never had taken a regular season snap, and he has arguably the greatest debut of any quarterback in NFL history. I mean, it's even if he never does anything else in his career, I mean, phenomenal. Now, I guess it needs an asterisk because they were playing a Raiders defense that looked absolutely inept. I don't know if they could have covered me last night, but still, what did you think of Nick Mullens' performance last night?
Hey, great for him, right? The guy who was with Chip Lindsey at Southern Miss and did some really good things offensively. So a nice little story and a nice little Alabama connection. Good for him. It's difficult to game plan for guys that you've never seen, never heard of, but I'm sure that's what John Gruden was thinking. Although that being said, I think there's a lot bigger issues with Oakland right now than maybe just dealing with Nick Mullens. But I was really impressed. You got to look at the moxie. He had guys Raheem Mostert step up yesterday. Like, a lot of guys rallied around Kyle Shanahan. I thought that was pretty cool to see. So I give a lot of credit to Nick Mullens and Shanahan and that offensive staff, the game plan as well as they did. I'm a big fan of what I saw. You don't get stories like that on a consistent basis. I think in the NFL, it was really fun to see something like that play out the way that it did.
All right, Adam, really short answer. The Red Sox were the best team in baseball all season long. Best record went through the Yankees, 100-win team, with the Astros, 100-win team. But were you surprised with the ease at which they cut through the Dodgers in the World Series?
No, that's what I expected. I thought it was going to be Boston in 5. Pitching staff was my only concern. Will the bullpen be able to hold up? Because David Price pitched as well as he could have in those last 3 starts. So I'm not surprised by that. But I like the mix-up. Craig Kimbrell, you ride him until you can't anymore, and then Chris Sale comes in to clinch it. Joe Kelly was fantastic in Game 5. So the only concern I had was for the pitching staff. Could they hold up against some of the better offensive teams that they were going to see? High home run count for the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Astros. So could you combat that? And they did. They held those teams in check for the most part. They scored 16 at Yankee Stadium as Alex Cora. So confidently talked about during the rally the other day in Boston. So I'm not surprised by anything we saw. Boston was the best team start to finish, and they won it all. Good for them.
Adam Amin, you can catch him on ABC tomorrow on the call of North Carolina State and Florida State at 2:30 Central. Also follow him on Twitter at Adam Amin. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thanks, my friend.